Hey everybody, what's up? This is Sweetie's World. Man, it could be your world too. Thanks for stopping by. I really appreciate it. You know me, I like to talk about things that that interest me, and I hope at some point that they interest you. And I like to start every video I have these days with a little Bible verse because it's nothing, guy upstairs deserves it, right? And me being a sinner, I need to do this more often. So, all right, then. Hey, look, this is the way it goes. He says, "You may say to yourself, 'My power and strength of my hands have produced this wealth.' But remember, the Lord your God, for it is He who gives you the ability to produce wealth." Amen. All right. Now, look, everybody. I hope everybody's had a great day. I really do. The world is at ends. It's no different today than I guess any other here in the recent days. Uh, we're threatened with nuclear war. It's at our doorstep. Could be any time. Could be 10 years from now. Nobody knows when this kind of stuff's going to happen. Not even me, not you, not nobody. You know, uh, but at some certain point, in some point in the future, it will happen. And I'm not going to say when. There's no way for me to know when. But it's just always good to be ready for it, anyways. Be ready for a lot of things. If you live in, like I said, earthquake-prone areas, you'd be ready for that. If you live in hurricane areas, you'd be ready for that. If you live in tornado, areas that have tornadoes a lot, then you try and prepare for that. So preparing for nuclear war is no different. It's just something else you got to prepare for. Uh, Preparing for the end of the world, you prepare for that as best you can, but that's in here. It's really in here. There's nothing you can actually physically buy to prepare for the end of the world. It's not. It is. So it's not to worry about that. But is it coming at some point in time? Sure it is. Is it coming anytime in the near future? Well, we can judge a lot of things by what's going on in the Middle East. We can judge a lot of things what's going on in Europe. So what's going on with Israel being surrounded by everybody, so it says that would be sort of the end of time. So you just got to keep that in mind too. But, the actual war with Israel, that's everybody surrounded Israel and everybody's fighting Israel, that hasn't happened, and right now that may not happen anytime soon, but you be ready for it because it could happen. And, there's people out there that say, oh, it's going to happen next week. I got paperwork and I got people on the inside and they know this and they know that and blah, 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 blah. Nobody knows jack. Nobody knows jack for sure when anything's going to happen. So don't let anybody out there tell you any different, that they know an exact date or time or exact period of month or year. Nobody knows. Nobody knows. You just prepare because it is true that at some point in the future, and it could be a near future, it can all happen. It could happen. It could happen in my lifetime, happen in your lifetime. Just one of those things you have to live with. And it's one of those things you have to prepare for. An economic collapse, you have to prepare for an economic collapse. You got to have enough food stored away to weather a couple, 3 years if you can afford it, or the ability to grow food, or know friends, maybe family that have that ability to grow food that can help sustain you through a couple, 3 or 4 years. It is what it is. So it's always good to be prepared for stuff. Always good to have some of this on hand because you just don't never know. We got a bunch of yahoos out there trying to fire up on local police and stuff, and they're firing up on the Border Patrol. They're going to get a really rude awakening. One of these days, they're going to fire back in mass. And there's going to be a whole lot of people hurt or deceased who are stupid enough to try and fight the government because you can't really fight the government. You can't. Not with what you just can't. Especially with what they've got in there doing. Little people out there all dressed in black, and they were able to buy some of this military garb and even some body armor that you can freely buy on the internet, which is a good or bad thing. But they're going to wake up to a very rude awakening one of these days when they start doing their crap. And the Border Patrol, local police, SWAT teams are all going to fight back. And it's going to be a very sad day for them. It is, because they're not going to win it. They're just not. So who knows, some of these yahoos could come running down your street, out in your neighborhoods. Now, if you live out and away from these little towns and cities and stuff, you're probably a far better safe there than you are anywhere. Being inside cities and inside, municipalities and being near small towns and stuff, because, let's face it, small towns don't have a large police force. The counties don't have a really large police force unless they're specific areas. So you have to be careful. You got to prepare for that. You got to prepare for that in all kinds of ways you can, because we don't know what's going to happen. So you try and do your best to be ready for all this stuff. Nuclear war, hypersonic missile systems. Russia and China are building these things like they're going out of style. America has started building these things, but we're not building them like it's going out of style, not like we should. They're way ahead of us on that. China's way ahead of us on a whole lot of things. Of course, if it wasn't for stolen technology, they wouldn't be ahead of us, because they really don't have enough to come up with it on their own over there. But they steal it from us, and then they can copy it, and they know how to copy really well. So, I'm just saying, make sure that you got your duckies in a row. Make sure you're one with the God above. He's the only one that counts for sure, because he's going to allow things to happen until a point where he doesn't. I mean, it is what it is. That's why there's bad things in the world, right? That's why bad things happen to good people, because it's the way of the world. Jesus Christ allows these things to happen in most cases. Now, who knows why? Whenever you get up there and pass on or whatever, and you get up there and meet him, if you get the opportunity to ask him, ask him. He's a really good God. Jesus Christ is a really good son of the one true living God. You could probably ask him, and he may or may not tell you. I don't know. But I'm just saying, you got to be ready for all this stuff. You just do. You just have to. Hey, Fuji water, good stuff, baby. It's good stuff. I always kind of need this stuff. Don't get dry, It just is what it is. It's been raining so much, all the dust coming in from the outside. But look, I'm just saying, be prepared, right? Just be freaking prepared. We've got, 25% of what we need to go to war with, our weapon systems and stuff. We're down to about 25% of what this country, should have 100%. We're down to 25%. We've been giving tanks away, giving missile systems away, beginning all kinds of stuff away. And, we've kind of given too much away. So that's why we're rebuilding, I guess, as fast as we can, but it's not as fast as our foreign powers. So at any rate, all right, hey, look, thanks for being here. I really mean it. God bless y'all. And until we meet again, we'll talk to you later. All right. Catch you later. Be good. Be careful and enjoy life as best you can.